John, I just think you have such an interesting story and so many nuggets of wisdom to share today, because I think so many of our listeners go through career transitions, many of them later in life, and I cannot wait to get into that. But we want to start with an icebreaker because we like
Okay.
to make our guests feel like our audience, like we're all in this together. If you could go back and give your 35-year-old self one piece of career advice, knowing everything you know now, what would it be?
Well, first of all, Carly and Joe, thank you for having me on the show. It's great to be here. The one piece of advice that I would give to my younger self is take more risks. When you're younger, you have a lot more opportunity to recover from taking risks. The world is a lot more forgiving. It may feel like it's difficult to take risks younger in your career, but I would maintain that younger is the ideal time to, take this idea that you've been thinking about forever and give yourself 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to see if it's going to fly. You're going to learn a lot, even if you fail.
What is younger? Are we talking 20s and 30s and 40s? Like, what are we talking here?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, I would say entry-level career is, 20s, maybe depending on the field into your early 30s. And I would say that mid-career really picks up in your 40s. I would say 40, 45 to 55, 60 these days, because people are working longer. People are living longer, working longer. The economy is very different. Lots we could unpack about the way that the world of work has changed over the last 20, 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to start diving into things because you said take the risks, fail, recover, learn from it. And speaking of recovering, you were actually fired 39% of your time during your entertainment career.
Right.
And yet you turned those setbacks into a thriving coaching practice. So what was the defining moment that made you realize those failures were actually preparing you for something bigger in what you're doing now?
There was not, I would say there was not a single moment where I realized that this is where this was all going. I think there are kind of pieces that kind of dropped into place over time, but I will tell you of a incident that happened to me. I think it was like in the late 90s, and it was probably, I had this early part of my career where I was kind of straight into entertainment, studio executive, film producer, kind of hit a wall around early 40s. At the same time as I was kind of getting more interested in what was going on in computer entertainment, interactive, what was called CD-ROM back in the day. And so I made this pivot in my 40s into interactive entertainment, wound up starting a tech startup with a partner, raising money into the dot-com bubble, kind of wild go-go days. And then that all collapsed in 2001 when the NASDAQ went from, 1,800 to 900 in a week or something. I mean, it was kind of a crazy fall, and everyone was heading for the hills. All our investors, kind of dropped us. The contracts that we had that we thought were rock solid kind of evaporated. And I was in this place of kind of, oh my God, here I go again, having to kind of pick myself up off the floor. And I ran into an old friend of mine, hadn't seen him a long time. And I think he was a talent agent, had been a talent agent at one of the big agencies for many, many years, very steady, stable business. And we're talking, and he says, John, I just have to say, you're not asking me the question, but I just want to tell you, I've always admired the way you've handled your career. And I was floored. And my first instinct was to say, oh, you have no idea how difficult it's been. And I'm in the process of kind of unwinding this company and all the studio jobs that didn't work out. And then the film that I had a lot of hopes for that bombed. And I thought, wait a minute, maybe there's something to this. Maybe from his perspective, I've done a lot of very interesting things and worked with interesting companies. I was working in Australia in the early 90s, running production for a company that I had kind of saved out of, I kind of helped pull it out of the wastebasket. People are going to kind of shutter this company. And I had this proposal about making films and doing distribution with Australia and all. Anyway, that was one instance. And then, of course, getting into the .com era. It's like no one was doing these kinds of crazy things. I feel like in giving the advice about taking a risk, I felt like I was forced to take risks because I had to pivot from whatever misfortune was going on and whatever volatility was upsetting the apple cart. But I thought, well, maybe I'm a kind of a reinventor. Maybe I'm an explorer. Maybe this is kind of who I am. And while there's a part of me who would just love to have a steady state job where I'm getting the same salary every year and it just keeps going, I would get bored doing that. And I know that about myself. And I kind of realized that about myself at the time. So that in a way was a kind of a pivot, a very freeing moment for me to kind of realize that I'm not this dysfunctional kind of crazy person who can't keep a job, which is something that kept echoing in my ear from something that my mom had said to me way back. It's like, you're in this crazy business. Why can't you keep a job? I thought, no, this is kind of the way it's supposed to be. Let me lean into that and proceed from that point of view.
Well, and suffice to say, your biggest pivot was around 50, right? And so, what did that reinvention actually look like midlife?
Right.
And why do you think it's an advantage rather than a disadvantage when you actually went out on your own, quote unquote?
Yes. Well, I did go out on my own, but I did kind of come back into mainstream entertainment as a result of that pivot. And the pivot happened after the .com company went up. And I thought, okay, what am I going to do now? I'm not going to go back to those jobs that I had in entertainment. They probably don't want me. I really don't want to do those jobs anymore. I've been running a company, I've had to pay employees and, worry about P&L. So I thought, I don't know what to do. No one's hiring in tech. Everyone was kind of, heading for the hills. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go back to school. I need to do a kind of a hard reset. I need to think differently about the world, about myself. And I knew about this psychology program here in LA, University of Santa Monica, which was doing some really interesting work based on a program that had been training marriage family therapists for the California state license. But they kind of veered off into a much more open life mastery, behavioral psychology overview program that was very much based on self-responsibility, very kind of a stoic approach to psychology and to behavior change and to issue resolution. And I thought, I can probably learn a few things about how people's minds work, about how my mind works, maybe change up the way I'm presenting myself, and let's see what happens. Within 9 months, this was kind of like a miraculous turnaround from going to a place where people were talking about in class, they were talking about these successes they were having. And I remember one day listening to someone's story about how they'd just gotten this great job, and was paying what they wanted, and they relocated where they wanted. And I thought, oh, great. Miracles are for other people. They're not for me. And within 9 months, I was at DreamWorks Animation, making more money than I never made before in a job that they designed for me based on 6 months of meetings that were kind of happening in this random fashion, where we figured out, unbeknownst to me at the time, a sweet spot that they were not covering, and where they saw that my background really applied directly to this area of development, talent development, that they were missing. I never thought of myself as a talent development executive. Talent development was always something that I did because you had to do it in every, corner of the world that I was in, the work that I was doing. They thought, oh, this is a talent development guy. And I thought, well, yeah, it's like, and you need this. And they're saying, well, do you want to do it? And I said, yeah, of course, and work at this company and work around all these amazing artists and technologists. Absolutely. So that's how that came about. And where it led to the work that I do today is that coming off of that, I realized that the one single factor that made the difference was my ability to consolidate and define a very niche set of best practices, results, outcomes, and visions that both described or derived from my background. So it made sense. It was verifiable, but it also matched where they were going. And this is a mindset and a paradigm that I think is so important for career seekers to understand, because that's how you get jobs today, right?
So I'm curious, how do we apply this to solopreneurs? I mean, these are the people that said, I don't want a job. I
Yes.
want, and also in that process, can you just elaborate a little more on this process that you just described of is distilling down, what you have to offer,
Yeah.
you're saying in the context of what people are looking for.
Yeah.
Because that's obviously very powerful, but I still don't know how to do it.
Solopreneurs are on the leading edge of this concept intrinsically, because as a solopreneur, you're not looking to get hired by a company to be in a boring job, deal with all the BS that goes along with that. You have a vision that you want to bring out into the world. Back to Tim Ferriss and the 4-Hour Workweek. The last 20 years have been an amazing period for solopreneurs to even exist. This was a word which did not exist 20 years ago, right? Because it cost you a lot of money to start a business, right? You needed a lawyer to set yourself up. You needed to put phone lines in. Right? Remember phone lines? Remember getting all the equipment? So we can do this today with a phone, but the same principles still apply for solopreneurs. You have to have a vision. You have to be able to articulate that vision. You have to understand what your product market fit is. And most of all, you have to understand that if you think your market is everybody, your market is nobody. And right, getting off the dime as a solopreneur requires you to do a lot of due diligence that I think many solopreneurs don't do, because they're so caught up in the enthusiasm they have for the product, for the service, for who they think is going to love this. And being a solopreneur, even more so than being an entrepreneur, which means a larger kind of group around you, the solopreneur is very vulnerable to being isolated and to being in a very small feedback loop. So one of the things that I think is really important, once you have figured out what your superpower is as a solopreneur, is to bring this to a wider, limited feedback group. And whether you are looking for a 1099 contract position, whether you are building your own business, whether you're being a W-2 employee, you need a personal board of directors. You need to put around you a cadre of people who know you well, who have worked with you perhaps in the past, family, friends, whomever, to give you the really hard feedback about your idea and help you bring it to reality. So that's number one. The second question, once you've kind of figured out that vision and now you've got your little network, your community really of people who are there to support you, is you have to understand how to be a thought leader around your practice, your product, your service, your identity as a solopreneur, right? Who are you in that mix? As a thought leader, you want to be able to stand up for what you stand for and what your product or service stands for, and be able to articulate this very concisely within a limited kind of a framework, or with a clear voice, so that other people both respect you, validate what you're putting out there, and trust you, most of all, to be in integrity around the product and service that you're providing, but also as a person, right? Because as a solopreneur, you're kind of the product, right? So those are the three factors, that solopreneur superpower, the community around you to give you the feedback and bring opportunities to the table. And 3, to be able to stand up as a thought leader, to defend your position, to grow in your position, and to be able to earn the credibility and the trust that you need.
Hey, I love it. I have one thing with the people around you, where you called it a board of directors. I mean, obviously, if you're an LLC, you probably won't have a board of directors that's formally a board of directors. But don't you feel that it's really important to choose those people very carefully?
Absolutely.
Because there are people that will not help you. They have the wrong perspective.
Absolutely.
They're risk intolerant. And so it's really critical to that group of people can make or break you.
Yeah. In the work that I do with my clients, I have a whole protocol around how to set this group up and about how to have the initial meetings with your prospective board of directors candidates, so that you really get a sense of whether they are going to be, fanboys and fangirls who just blow smoke up your butt no matter what, or whether they are there to be, to put you in, kind of squash you under their thumb because they're so important and they're so experienced and they know what's what. You have to kind of exclude those two contrasts on both sides and really go with the people who are there to support you and have very specific expertise to share, just like in a corporate board, right? Each member of that board has a particular strength, background. You're casting this little movie of your board of directors, kind of in my Hollywood terms. It's all about the casting, right? So yes, Joe, to your point, this is really the number one challenge that you face as a solopreneur when you're building your advisory team.
I love the analogy there. So you say that there's a hidden job market that most professionals don't know how to access. What is that, and how can solopreneurs approach it, knowing that they're not looking to be hired by a company, but they are looking to be maybe hired by clients or individuals that are looking to hire their services? What does that look like?
So the hidden job market really applies to people applying to W-2 jobs. The solopreneur has the luxury really of not having to deal with all of the terrible injustices and dehumanization that's going on today in the job market. And you just have to kind of open up LinkedIn and look at all of the outrageousness and ghosting and scams that are going on for people who are in the job market, who are unfortunately acting the way we were taught to act 30, 40 years ago. You send out your resume and they're going to come and they're going to bring you in for an interview. It's like, no, you're going to send your resume into a black hole and you'll never get a call for an interview. So solopreneurs don't have to deal with that. But the hidden job market is the referral market, plain and simple. And if you are a hiring manager, you're going to prefer to hire someone who is referred to you by a trusted source versus just, entertaining a candidacy coming in over the transom or some, stack of resumes that's been dropped on your desk by HR. Again, for solopreneurs, it's about reputation, it's about connection. And this is where, interestingly, I think thought leadership becomes very much a part of it. If you are able to clearly, persuasively articulate the value of your product and service, and you're able to build some traction around that through, doesn't have to be advertising, it can be organic social reach that you use to validate the work that you're doing, but also reaching out through social channels, using LinkedIn Sales Navigator to identify leads and to personally reach out. It's tough on LinkedIn today. I think it's tough everywhere today to make contacts, to really generate leads, but it is all a personal question. It's a personal person-to-person challenge that you have as a solopreneur. And in that sense, the hidden job market is the normal client market for any solopreneur.
Well, so with that, you're saying reaching out on social, you could reach out in person too. But what if there's a solopreneur that's like, okay, I need to help my reputation or improve my reputation. I need to be the thought leader. That probably means I need to be networking to get to know more people, but I hate networking. How can they reframe for people that don't like it? How can they get rid of the cringe of the idea of networking
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
actually do genuine relationship building if they're
Right.
starting over and starting because maybe not their resume because they're not submitting a resume, but maybe their LinkedIn profile has a whole history of their past and they're trying to talk about what's going on now and their future. How do
Right.
they do that?
Lots to unpack in your question. First thing, just to kind of cover the LinkedIn profile and the background. One of the career narrative challenges that we have is to take all of the different experiences that we've accumulated through many of the jobs that we've done or the businesses that we've started and create a coherent story so that someone looking at that profile today goes, oh, that makes sense. That background, each step on that background contributes to who that person is today, what their experience is, what their product and offering and service offering is, and it's relevant to my interest. So the solopreneur who is looking at that profile and going, oh my God, I mean, how do I put all this together? I would challenge you to look back to your early years, what kind of got you into the world of work in the first place? What really inspired you? Question I often ask clients very early on in our process is, when did you have the most fun in your work, in your job, right? When was that? What was going on there? Because when you're having fun, you're free, you're creative, you're enjoying the work experience. The people that you're working with are loving you, you're loving them. It's a great energetic time in your life. You want to be able to maintain that, recapture that if necessary, because that's when you're doing your best work. So what are the elements starting from that place that you're now carrying through? How can you talk about all these different experiences in terms of where this is taking you, right? What are you picking from that miserable job that you lasted in 6 months? What's the lesson that you learned from that you're now applying in your business, right? So there are all sorts of ways of really creating this profile. This helps you in building the relationships, as you're talking about, for people who are concerned about networking, who are kind of hesitant or feel awkward about networking because they think they have to sell themselves. And my philosophy about this is that networking is never about selling yourself. It's never about trying to, create this salesy, glib expression that's going to persuade someone to work with you. You want to be authentic. You want to be giving. You want to find out if the person that you are meeting shares values with you, right? So, networking is no longer very much of a kind of, a mixer kind of a thing. I know that they still exist. These are, I think, very pointless gatherings. What you want to do is do your research. You want to be able to decide who are the kinds of people that you want to target. And then you want to do a little digging on who they are. You don't want to kind of contact people randomly. And you don't want to contact them simply from a transactional basis. It's like you look in, what's that business that they're in? Okay, well, yeah, that fits. So let me contact them. You want to go a little bit deeper to find out what makes them tick, right? Where are they from? What are their values? Where do they go to school, right? What are some of their interests that are different or complementary to the work that they do? Start there. Start with the person-to-person connection and then build on that into the business connection. So that's one way of going about it.
Okay. Well, and another thing I want to touch on that I think a lot of people that are transitioning careers, specifically, from like corporate, let's say, to solopreneurship, is they kind of have an identity crisis. And you went from a film studio executive to a coach, author, and thought leader, which are all very reputable on their own, but it's a big identity shift. So what advice do you have for professionals who are leaving a prestigious title, let's say, to go out on their own and do something on their own terms?
I think the first thing you have to recognize about identity is that your identity is never your job. Our language kind of undermines that, because you meet someone and you say, well, what do you do? And they say, well, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a director of whatever. But that's not really true. That's not really who you are. That's how you work. It's like, I work as would be a more accurate way of saying it. But we get into this habit of identifying ourselves with the role, which is very dangerous. So this may explain why people have this lingering difficulty in standing up for the role that they are doing, the work that they're doing as a solopreneur. As a solopreneur, you actually are more entitled in a way to identify yourself with the work that you do, because as a solopreneur, it's really an expression of you in so many ways. You are the product again. So I think that the journey from corporate to solo is, or should be, a liberating process where you're able to free yourself of that identity that was holding you back as a salaried professional, and really step into this new identity as the solopreneur, providing value to your clients. So in that sense, I think it's a great opportunity to step up as an individual.
So in my opinion, when you go through this shift, like, you want to go into it confidently, but you say confidence comes last, not first. I don't understand. How do people lean into this when they're taking a really big career move?
Right. If you talk to any number of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, people who've started businesses, and you said, so did you know this was going to work? I would say 99% of them are going to say, I had no idea. I was scared blankless going into this, but I had this vision and I had this drive and I had to do it. I had to see if it really was going to work. And I think that describes the process for me, that if you think, oh, let me wait until I'm more confident before I take this step, before I quit my job and start this business, then you're going to be waiting a long time.
Yep.
The universe rewards the bold move. You want to understand that there are risks involved, so you want to manage those risks. That may be that may look like doing this as a side gig, right? This may look like you're going to make sacrifices in other areas of your life in order to get the time and the energy or the money necessary to kind of take those first steps into your own venture. Whatever that might be, right? You have to understand that it's not about confidence. It's about vision. And in retrospect, you can say, well, now I feel a lot more confident because it worked out. But don't let that lack of confidence stand in your way from taking action.
Okay, touche. You win. I get it.
It's
I
true.
get the reversal.
You got to do it.
Yep.
You're never going to be confident until you're successful.
Yep. Well, John, your mission now is to empower mid-career professionals to never have to look for a job again. And in our audience's case, work for yourself moving forward.
Yeah.
So for someone listening who wants that kind of career freedom, what is the very first step you think they should take this week?
This is going to be a strange one. But this is kind of like the core practice that I recommend to everyone. And that is, start a daily journal. Write one handwritten page per day in a small diary or notebook, something like this, 8.5 by 5.5, Moleskine, whatever. And use this as a kind of not as a log journal, where you're kind of jotting down what you did, but as a kind of a free form exercise in checking in with yourself. How am I feeling today? What's going on? What am I afraid of? What am I feeling good about? What happened to me this week that really is nagging at me, lingering, that was a bad thing or a good thing? Where do I want to go? How do I feel? What's my temperature check, right? The process of the journal, and this is very much based on a book by a woman named Julia Cameron called The Artist's Way, where she was dealing in working with writers with writer's block. And the morning pages concept that she came up with was really to distract the artist from what was blocking them and set up a communications channel between their conscious mind and their unconscious mind, just through the action of handwriting in this journal. And so this applies in my world as well. And I tell people, don't bother with the 3 pages a day. That's too much. A page is fine, but do it every day. In the morning when you wake up, at night before you go to bed, and just keep doing it, even if you have nothing to say, even if you're kind of blank, and even if you're angry at the fact that you're even having to do the process. Write those pages, because it sets up this communications channel. And you may be writing about stuff. It's like, okay, I don't know what to write about today. Well, let's just kind of start here. So, I got off work and whatever, and that guy was bothering me. And then I had, got on the bus or the subway or got in my car. Or whatever. And then all of a sudden, as you're writing, you're going to get an idea. You're going to get an idea. Oh my God, there's that person that I haven't thought about for months or years, and they would be a really good person to talk to about this problem that I'm struggling with in putting my business together. As an example. So the journal really is the kind of this foundry, intellectual, emotional foundry that you can get into to help you overcome and engage with the issues that are going on below the surface that are either available to you for inspiration or necessary for you to handle in order to move forward.
Such great advice.
I mean, it's very counterintuitive. I know when people say, "Well, here's a cheat sheet, to start your business and get an LLC together and do all these things." It's like, yeah, that's the easy part. The hard part is showing up every day for yourself and for your vision. Because again, you're a solopreneur, right? You've got to be relying on yourself 100% of the time. There's no one there to prop you up in any meaningful way other than, honey, keep going. It's going to be fine. It's like, you don't understand.
Yeah. Well, John, you have been so successful at helping mid-career professionals kind of navigate transitions in their career. So we have to ask you, what is your favorite quote about success?
This is you're gonna laugh at this one. So the one that keeps coming back to me forever, and this is something that a very wise and funny teacher once said to me, and that is, God fires you from jobs you're too dumb to quit.
We've heard, we're on almost episode 300 and we have not heard that one because
that's a new one. Absolutely.
But it is.
That is an original.
And what he means by that is that when things are going right and things are going wrong on some level, and you want to be in integrity with yourself first. I think this is so important for solopreneurs. No one's going to be as honest with you as you at the end of the day. So before the world falls apart because of your inattention and denial, you need to step it up and look at yourself really, really hard in the mirror and go, I need to deal with this, right? I need to make a change, either in myself or on the outside, but it's all up to me at the end of the day to face the music. So don't put it off. Don't delay. Don't let the outside world control you. You control it, and start by controlling yourself.
Awesome. Well, John, if people are intrigued, where can people find out more about you and learn more?
I would just look me up on LinkedIn. I'm the only John Tarnoff career coach on LinkedIn. So JohnTarnoff. Check out my profile, connect with me, and let's see if we can do stuff together.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We so appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, leave that 5-star review. It helps us spread the word to other solopreneurs that are going through what you're going through. Subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube, and share this episode with a friend. And we'll see you next time on The Aspiring Solopreneur.